HR.
Whether it's passive talent or it's active talent.
That's a soft skill that really gets undersold in the hiring process.
How to manage in the virtual environment.
You get a diverse, cultured group of people. It's a win-win for everybody.
More conversion from candidate lead.
What does that look like in this new virtual world?
Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday, noon Eastern time, and you know what that means. It is time for Talent Experience Live. I'm your host, Devin Foster, and this is your weekly look at hot topics in HR, leaders within the industry, as well as hot new HR tech. Today, we are talking hot topics in HR, how to create a sustainable hybrid workplace that retains top performers. As always, we cover as much as we possibly can within the allotted time about recruitment, talent acquisition, as well as talent management. And I promise you, we are covering all three of those today. But before we start, it is tradition to always hear where everyone is tuning in from. So definitely feel free to hop into the comment section, ask your questions, let us know where you are from. And while you're there, don't forget to share to your network. Sharing is caring. And if you're never able to catch the full episode or miss a week or anything along those lines, you can always catch the replay on Phenom's YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe there. I think I paid the bills enough for that. But you can always catch the full episode there or on our blog, phenom.com/blog. We do a nice little write-up and recap there along with clips of what we think are the most important aspects of the show that are covered. It looks like a few people are already chiming in the comment section with where they are from. Justin is joining us from King of Prussia. Welcome, Justin. And Rich from Boston is joining us as well. Welcome. I teased it at the top of the program. Today, we are talking about how to create a sustainable hybrid workplace that retains top performers. I think it's been a topic of discussion everywhere, in every single business, in every office. Hybrid work is the future. And if companies are losing employees due to the lack of clear policies, and what should organizations do to attract and keep high value talent? I see a couple other people chiming in, some from India. Jen's joining us from Ambler. Welcome. It is also tradition around these parts to do our icebreaker question. And today, this is a question that I posed on LinkedIn and got some surprising results. As many companies look to return to the office, either full-time or hybrid, what is the one thing that you, the audience, will miss most about working from home? As you answer this, I do want to shout out some more people who hopped in. Looks like Tia is joining us from Arizona. Alice is joining us from St. Louis, Missouri. Adam joining us from Bryan, Texas. Welcome, all of you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And the one thing that I will miss most about working from home, quite frankly, is nothing. I love working in the office. A lot of people dislike the commute. That was one of my favorite parts of the day. I was fortunate enough to take the train to and from the office, so I got to catch up on my favorite Netflix shows that my girlfriend perhaps didn't like. Maybe read a little bit if I was feeling bold. Listen to my favorite podcasts and all sort of stuff, as well as get either amped up for the day or kind of amped down on my return home. But the poll showed a result that I think most people can relate to. Around 75% of the responders answered that they will miss not having a commute. And I understand it is easy to hop up and just roll over to your desk, wherever it may be, put on a pot of coffee, log in and start your day. But personally, I am excited to be back in the office. That's why I'm back in the studio today. We have the lights on, the mic. We look super official. And today, I have two very special guests joining me. We have Dr. Adam Hickman, Senior Workplace Strategist and Remote Work Expert at Gallup, as well as Jennifer Robison, Gallup's Senior Editor. So without any further hesitation, we will jump into the topic at hand today, which is how to create a sustainable hybrid workplace that retains top performers. And with that, let's bring them on the show. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for joining the show. How's everybody doing today?
Thanks, Devin.
Great, Devin. Awesome to kick off and to see all the interaction already in the chat. So looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. A very active chat today. I am excited about it. Again, just a friendly reminder, if you have any questions for Adam or Jen, feel free to let us know in the comments section. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's topic, it is tradition around these parts to go over the icebreaker question as well as the career path. So I will start with you, Jen. Number one, what will you miss most about working from home? I see you're both still working from home right now, so you get to lavish in these moments now. And then also, typically we have a lot of HR professionals on here, and I oftentimes say nobody really grows up wanting to work in HR. I know you guys aren't specifically in human resources, but I would love to hear how you got to where you are today, because I think everyone's is fascinating, and it's a great little pick-me-up for those people who may be stuck in a rut and want to take that next step. So Jen, we'll start off with you.
I've been working from home for 16 years, and I'm not going to stop working from home. So I will miss nothing. I'm also looking forward to nothing.
Awesome. Well, how about your career path? How did you start off, and how did you get into your role at Gallup?
I got extremely lucky. I won the professional lottery. I started at Gallup just as it was beginning to publish, and just as they started to need writers who could think analytically about science. So that's how I started, and that's how I've progressed.
Awesome. Is there a specific location that sells those lotto tickets that I perhaps need to go and frequent on a regular basis?
Omaha, Nebraska.
Awesome. And Adam, how about what will you miss working from home, or potentially not in Jen's case? And also, how did you get to where you're at today?
Yeah, I've kind of been in a remote situation for the last coming up on 6 years with Gallup. So I was in Ann Arbor, then I was in Omaha, and actually now I'm right outside of Cleveland. So I'm back to remote. Often Jennifer and I call our home city our home offices. So she's in her local home office. I'm in my local home office. But when I was driving to work, what I will miss being in Omaha is the podcast time. This is where I caught up on things that I heard that was good, or some sort of Audible book on the way in and out. What I won't miss is when it was tornado season in Omaha, you never know what was following you home. So that was, I will not miss any of that, or the traffic. That's for sure. My commute's a little better these days.
That is terrifying. I have to comment on the podcast. I think there are only specific places where you can truly listen to the podcast. I was at the gym this morning and I saw someone walking around laughing. I assume that they were listening to some sort of comedic podcast or something like that. But my self-consciousness was like, this guy's making fun of the way that I'm lifting weights, the way that I am going through the gym. So if you're listening to podcasts in the gym, just don't. But Adam, how did you get to where you're at today?
Yeah, I grew up in a different environment, telecommunication-wise, and was a part of operations for a while, but found the unique niche on, we always say HR, but I always say they're humans that are resources. It's not a play on words. It's literally what it is. And just to see how you can maximize people's potential, regardless if it's L&D, if it's succession planning, if it's, anything that supports the business over the years, I'm sure we can all agree, it's no longer an option, it's a requirement, right? That's how you stay competitive, is you rely on your human resource partners, not just in the bad times, but in the good times as well. So I've kind of carved out an area to keep progressing in that state.
Awesome. Well, we will jump right into the topic at hand today. And I think the first one is almost obvious, right? My girlfriend works in the recruitment industry, and hybrid is something that talent is talking about no matter what. Sometimes they won't even consider a position if it isn't hybrid at this point. So how is this impacting really attracting talent, especially when in some cases, in some offices, in-office work is required? You may have to come in to record a podcast. You may have to do something. But the candidates and the talent is really saying, I want the best of both worlds. I want a hybrid workplace. We'll start with you, Adam.
Yeah, I love the question. So let me try and think of an analogy to make this work for everybody. If you've never used a dog whistle, that's okay. You get the idea of it. Is certain breeds hear certain tones of, and I'm making that up. I don't know if it's tones or maybe it's frequency. This is where Jennifer, is that right? Did I say that right? Okay, I was close. I get it close. The same thing is when you post the job requisition, there are certain talented individuals out there that are dialed into keywords, phrases, mission and purpose reasons, but also over the last year, the world, kind of figured out, how do I make this work? How do I get done and be more productive here than at the office and vice versa? And then there's some people that's like, gosh, I can't stand this at home stuff. I can't wait to get back in the office. Great. Just know both of those folks are out there looking at your job requisitions. So right from the start, how they interact with it. Here's what I love. If you're joining right now, or maybe you're listening to this again, go to your career page. What kind of messages are you signaling right from the start? Here's what I mean by this. Let's just pick on millennials, right? Even though I don't have a sweet hairdo, I am a millennial, a little elder of one. But knowing that we care about mission and purpose and how do we fit into that, if I have that really dialed into who I am as a person and what I aim to achieve at the time of retirement, whenever that is for us, can I see the mission and purpose of what I want to do and join your company right from the start, or is it not? So last week, one of my friends, I won't list names or companies here, had talked about their company was very strict on customers, not so much on employee side of things. Well, if you delve into any of Gallup's science and research, you'll see we start a little different on things. We know about great managers, we know about great employees, and if you hear about our Gallup path one day, you'll see how that leads to the shareholders and stockholders. Okay, so if that's the aim to it, and I want to be a part of something, and I see nothing about the employee experience, I'm less tuned into that because I can't figure out how I fit into this. So the point where I'm going with this is that as people are evaluating both hybrid and office, one or the other, they want the flexibility. And hopefully somewhere in our conversation, we talk a little bit about the sensitive topic of pay, but that becomes a driver of how is a pay for performance set up in that way. And then also, do I have the flexibility? Because just yesterday, and Jennifer can speak more to this, about what our CHROs are telling us at Gallup, and we're talking to enterprise companies across the globe. It's flexibility was a thing, let's say 2 years ago. It's a reality now. And you're going to hear it in your interviews if you're not offering it, or you might not even get a chance to talk to that most talented person that would apply to it because you missed it in your messaging.
That makes complete sense. Joel Hoffman chimes in the comments section and says, in 2021, if an employer isn't offering a hybrid model or flexible work schedule to candidates and employees, they will get left behind. And I'm going to use my train analogy right now and say, if I'm late for the train, I've missed the train. There's no catching up to it. I'm not going to catch it at the next stop. And I think that's the way that it's going. And to your point, Adam, it starts with what you put out externally facing on your career site, making sure that that message is clear so that people understand that this is something that you've taken into consideration.
Yeah.
Perfect segue lead in when you talked about compensation there. I think that this is something that is almost viral at this point on my LinkedIn. And it is, why don't companies put out what they're paying, and what the pay scale is when they post a job? It's almost political at this point, two very polar opposite sides. And I think the answer to that is organizations are now exploring remote work for people in different areas where income and in-cost living is going to be significantly different. You can live in Omaha, Nebraska, but potentially work for a city or an organization that's based out of New York City. So for not only candidates, how do they approach this and say, I know what I'm worth, I want to be paid XYZ, but also how do organizations combat that and say, I don't want to pay a New York City salary for someone that may not necessarily require it in whatever area they are in? And we'll start with you, Jen.
From what I'm hearing, there are very few companies that aren't going to have location-based pay. It's just an accounting economic necessity. Location pay cuts payroll costs, which is the biggest cost of any company. And it really doesn't eliminate a whole lot of talent from the talent pool. I'd do it if I ran a company. But I would say very clearly that you live in Oklahoma, you make Oklahoma money. On the other hand, what you get from working here is more valuable than money. And there are a lot of things that actually are. Like getting to do what you do best every day, working for a purpose, a clear career path, opportunities for development. And you know what? If your well-being is highest in Oklahoma, go Sooners. But you're going to get paid for what you do, and what you do adds value.
Makes sense. Adam, anything to add?
Yeah, I always, this is such the fun conversation about pay because everyone's like, gosh, roll up your sleeves. It's about to get real. So let's make it real. Just to give you some other context too. So I started studying remote work before it was cool. Let's start there. This was years ago. And then to come out and find that all my study on isolation and how it impacts performance, remote working, then the pandemic happened. I had no idea about it. Let me clear the comments. Let me clear any theories out there. I had no idea what was coming. Just was a magical moment of dissertation aligned with what was going on. The pay piece comes into, and there's some things we should just keep in mind. There's base pay, there's pay for performance. Give you a little history on base pay real quick, and then let's talk through of what's potentially in the future for things. Because I do think that the pay for performance is more intriguing and inspiring for some, and those that are just chilling at home, maybe not so much for them. But for base pay, it signals the employees that they're valued. I'm sure at some point somebody has along the line, you've heard it, said it, been in a room and someone said, I feel like I should be getting paid more. Okay, well, your base pay kind of gives that to accept the job, right? That was at the time that you said yes to the job, here's what we're offering. But base pay alone will not inspire anybody to continuously improve. What's required? No surprise, we wrote a book called It's the Manager. They're a big component of what that is. So an effective pay conversation should be ongoing. Right? Should be that they appreciate their pay because they're hearing their value within that. And it doesn't mean it's like, hey, your salary is this, so appreciate it. That's not a base pay conversation. And please don't put on your subject line of your emails base pay conversation. Right? Your best managers ingrain this in the conversations to what that is. So how do you do this? Okay, so fast forward a little bit. There's been scholars and practitioners out there like Daniel Kahneman, Daniel Pink is really big on extrinsic and intrinsic motivators. And if you use that as a construct framework to your conversations, you can kind of balance both sides on intrinsically, that's where you're going to get the most out of them, right? They're going to feel valued, but they're going to produce the most. Extrinsically, it's the carrot and the stick piece pushed together. Here's what I mean. There's a famous study on call centers where if you had a pay set up to where if you sold this, you got this. Everybody got to that because they sold it, right? Well, what happens when you take away the money? You take away the performance because there's nothing to go after it anymore. Okay, take the same principles that study, put it in the workplace. You can find the same shtick there. If you do this, then you get that. However, if you're dialed into the intrinsic piece to it, the everyday piece to it, which is on Monday, I get to go to work, not I have to go to work. You don't have to worry about what's the next incentive piece to it. You're paying them based on their performance of what it is that they're doing. So some key factors to keep in mind. Properly motivating employees, that sounds very specific and technical, is that they understand their pay. How do you know that? Ask them. There's no secret weapon. You don't need to read 85 blogs on it. Just ask them. Do you understand how the pay is set up here? That it's consistent. So if you manage a team of 12, doesn't matter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, it's consistent conversation over and over. That it's fair. Now the fair is the hard part because to Jennifer's point, if I live this, if I was in Ann Arbor versus I'm in Cleveland, boy, we're states away here, and the pay, the cost of living is drastically different. Now let's throw in Cleveland to San Francisco. Well, it just doesn't happen because the cost of living is completely different. But the fairness to it is for them to see and be valued and thoughts and opinions count as it goes into that conversation. How did we arrive at this piece to it? And if you're in your career, you know ideally what the market pays because you had that idea hopefully before you took the job. But if not, be clear as to how fair it is amongst all the variables you have involved. This is where your human resources friends come into hand. They can help you prepare for that conversation. That it's accurate, right? That you're not fudging any of the numbers, that you're clear on what's expected of you, what's expected of them. And if they ask you, how do I get to that marker, right? You're clear. You don't say, well, work harder. Well, okay, to just today, or can I work harder on Friday? And then it's within their employees' control. I'm sure at some point somebody listening, or maybe you've been a part of too. I mean, even in not at Gallup, but other companies, you felt like it's out of control. I can't achieve that because I'm not set up to do that. Well, that not only is impossible for them, but it's a demotivator. And if you want to see the disengaged workforce of the world right now, go on social media on Sunday nights. You'll see who's disengaged because they're vocal about it, right? And that's where you get into it. So from base pay to performance is set up on that intrinsic piece. And if you can switch to a method of based on what you need to get accomplished, how do you set up a pay scale for it? Great. If you can't, I understand. There's some roles that it's not possible for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also great advice on not titling any email or calendar invite as base pay conversation. That's the quickest way to get flagged by your IT team as a phishing email, and you're going to be in hot water. Not sure. That I know from experience. But I'm curious. There's been a lot of talk, and a lot of big tech organizations have promoted that you can work from home from now till forever. And another thing that has been tied along with that is a lot of these big cities were in the news for almost the great exodus, right? Where people were leaving New York City. They were going to places like Lake Tahoe and some of these smaller market areas. From your kind of research and conversations, are more organizations exploring that pay for performance formula? Because that has to be a challenging conversation with an existing employee who said, hey, we're work from home now. I'm going to move to a state with zero income tax and I'm making 6 figures plus, but I don't really need that here. Is that happening? Are those conversations happening, or are they kind of just letting a lying dog sleep, if you will?
Yeah. So rewind 2 years ago, think of all the conversations that weren't happening. This is fun. We considered writing an article about the old days of snow days is kind of the running title that we would have kiboshed because that would have been a bad one for education, for schools to learn on how do you do a remote learning day on a snow day. And everyone said at the time, oh gosh, no one would do that. Wrong. Right? Now what happened? Well, snow days are a thing of the past. We've retired those. Now we have these learning days in our area. So it wasn't a conversation until it had to happen. Okay, fast forward. It has to happen now. Because we're figuring that not only are the demands of the jobs evolving, but the needs of the employees are evolving. And the smart managers, leaders of the world adapt to that. They don't say, well, this is how we've done it, and this is how we're going to be doing it. Okay, well, before, working from home was, that was a perk that only a few experienced, or you had to take a quiz to be able to do it, or right, there was some sort of gate check before you could do it. Well, now that's not the case anymore. Right, people have figured out what that is. So those positions, and I say them with a fine point, that have specific job demands to where you can tie things, projects to pay. If it wasn't a conversation, it is now. However, not every organization is ready and willing to do that. Here's what I mean. In our millennial research that we did, we found that if you had a bad culture, the more stuff you added, which is so goofy, all of the ping pong tables and things of that sort, if it was a bad culture, it made it worse. Because imagine the conversations like, gosh, they don't give us good insurance, but they can afford all this stuff. Why are you doing that? So the same thing where if you're not in a thriving status of an organization or team, when you turn this one on, this one's a big one to turn on for. And it is possible. I mean, we help companies all the time turn this on for them. But there are things in front of that you got to line up before it's possible. So is the conversation more relevant? Sure. But there's factors to consider before you do it.
That makes sense. And also, without ping pong tables and games, how else are they going to make a cool culture video? That's right. That's very important. And also, rest in peace to snow days. That was a beloved part of my childhood, and I feel bad for the youth of today and tomorrow. But speaking of policies, if you will, like snow days, organizations are oftentimes working to craft and implement sustainable work policies, right? Safety is at, I think, the top of most employees' mind, especially when they look at who's going to be in the office on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday versus who's going to be in the office Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So what's your advice, Jen, for leadership when it comes to sustainable work policies in now the new normal?
When Adam was talking, I kept wanting to raise my hand and say, well, first you got to figure out what you mean by performance. And not a lot of companies have gotten there. So pin that. But meanwhile, think about what sustainable means. By definition, it means that you can achieve the outcomes you want at the lowest possible cost, says an unregenerate capitalist. So first, I'd advise you factor in the cost of disengagement because it's crazy expensive. We've estimated employees who are not engaged cost their companies 18% of their annual salary. It's insidious, and it destroys the organization's potential, its growth potential, its ability to innovate and attract. And 2/3 of workers in America are not engaged. So the first step of sustainability is engagement. It has to be, because disengagement is such a money suck, and you cannot be sustainable losing that much money. Second is deciding what kind of outcomes you want, and the right outcomes depend on your objectives. Your objectives have nothing to do with the worker's location. So it's harder than you think, though. A lot of CHROs have told us they're not even going to measure productivity anymore, because they don't think that the metrics they've got measure productivity. They measure activity. So I'd say get some hard numbers on the outcomes you want, for real. Then teach managers to define their expectations and yours in words everybody can understand. Get super clear on compliance. That's how you avoid unintended bad consequences. Yeah. Then let people get to the outcomes that you've defined their way. That opens the door for individual talent. There's really no way to force it. You can only make it possible. And talent's an accelerator. It's just high octane performance fuel. So the beauty of that approach is that it lets you evaluate outcomes by what matters to you, whatever it is, revenue or growth or retention, fewer ping pong tables, better videos, whatever. But if you do that, your work policies aren't just sustainable, they're profitable.
That makes complete sense. And I do want to get back to your original point where you said you wanted to raise your hand specifically about performance. So I'll hand the floor back over to you if you're up for it.
Yeah, well, I think people say performance and they mean an awful lot of things, but they don't define it for the worker. And a lot of performance is tacit. And those tacit expectations, those unwritten rules really do get in the way of performance and of people and of retention. So when you say performance, do you mean show up at 8 and leave at 5 and don't steal stuff? Or do you mean here's what we want you to do? It has to be done with these principles in mind, under these cultural values, and it has to generate X amount of outcome. But the more you tell people what X means, the better the performance is going to be.
That makes sense. There's a reason why when people walk into offices now, there's no punch-in clock, right? It's because that piece of the puzzle, we're no longer putting together widgets, right? A lot of individuals who are in work from home situations are, knowledge workers for that sense. So they may do some of their best work past 5 p.m. or whatever it may be. But Jen, to your point, defining what X is and that it's not just showing up 9 to 5. And if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late, is so important there. I want to call out a comment from Adam Reed here. It says, like most, I transitioned to full work from home last year with my previous company. Beforehand, I had never worked from home, and I personally love being able to work at home or at least have the option to work a few days from home instead of the office. So my question is, as people like Adam who have found out through really the terrible pandemic that they enjoy working from home or that hybrid model, how can organizations be proactive in not only recruiting messages, but also job postings, phone calls, without weaving out those remote workers? I've spent some time hopping on different job boards and things like that, and it's confusing. Organizations will say, hey, we're based out of Ambler, but this role is open to North America. So what does that mean? Does that mean I have to come in once a week, once a month? And since I think a lot of research shows now, a lot of people aren't reading job descriptions to the extent that they may have previously have been. How do you put that out there in the open so that it's clear and concise? And Adam, I see you chuckling a little bit, so I'm going to hand the floor over to you first.
I'm gonna channel my friend Judge Judy on this one. Just say it. That's it. So Adam's, first of all, great beard, man. I'm aspiring to get to that one day. The hair is toast, but awesome. Let's start with those already hybrid, and you're kind of uncovering what we should be doing. We did a study on 100 leaders to distill it down to what are the demands of leaders years ago and kind of progressed the way through. There's two things I would say if you're in a manager leader position you can do today, and then let's talk through the job postings. One, you can help them make sense of an experience or its challenge that they have today. And here's how you do that. Tell me your most recent success story you have as a remote employee. It's less about it's less about what they say, but it's totally about what they say. It's less about the story and more about the how-to of that piece. If you can unpack what they did, how did they build relationships in that story? How did they get work done? When did they get work done? Was it 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. before the kids got up, and then you got them to school, and then they came back, and then you had life, and then you had kid stuff? I just uncovered my daily schedule. Was it done through Teams? Was it done through Zoom? Was it done, you're listening for all of the pieces, what we would call talent in a role, for them to unpack, and for a manager to say, okay, gosh, here's all the principles I heard you got, how you got that work done. That was the most successful. How do you do that again on this next project? How do we keep replicating that? Okay. And then beg the question, like, did you need to be here in person for that? Because I'll hear often like, we got to get back to the office. Why? What do you do so differently than when you're in? And everyone says, well, there's always the casual conversation or collaboration, or there's the meeting after the meeting. Like, well, yeah, but you can't do that remote wise. Like, we have some really good principles at Gallup and Jennifer and we've maybe seen each other in person 3, 4, 5 times, maybe. Yeah. And we've been partnered for the last 3 years. Now, I know if Jennifer's green, I'm not saying, hey, are you free, or email. I'm just going to call you, right? And there's just certain pieces that you can ingrain in that up front to help that transition, or to stay as a high performer in that piece. So make sense of your experience is the one. The next piece is create some experiences, right? Have some experiments and say, you've got this option coming up. Let's try a hybrid, right? Does it make sense for you to come in on certain days, or and what you're looking for is you're answering that question, why would you come into the office? What was different? What was benefit? And share it with others. So making sense of past success, start there. That's always great, right? Let's not worry about, I know at Gallup we have this idea of we're a strengths-based company. Well, we're not just a strengths-based company for our clients, we do it ourselves. We kind of follow what's in the, everyone says, what's the hidden secrets? Like, they're not secrets, they're in the book. We just make it work. So make sense of that through past success, and then create some experiences and see how it goes. Okay, fast forward to your job postings. I love this one. If you, and what you said about, do people read job postings? Well, I think they read, where is it and how much do they make outside of the title? Because we make a general assumption that a title equals this. Okay, so if it's in North America, just write it. Don't make it a quasi-experiment to figure out, well, you said New York, but I'm going to negotiate and make it remote. And they're like, yeah, it was remote. We couldn't click that option or something. So why do that? Because go back to the dog whistle analogy. Your most talented people are looking for those things, right? And if it's that role that calls for that, where you no longer have to limit your talent pool to a certain area and you can broaden it, then broaden it starting with the job posting, because your broadened talent person is looking to say, gosh, you know what, that's not going to work for my life. That affects my well-being. I can't be in that spot. I can't be in that location. So I guess that's no longer an option for me. The scarier part is those that have figured it out, and you're starting to see this drive and push for, you got to get back in the office. You got to do this. That's the way that we've done this, and that's the way that's going to happen. We are not prisoners of pensions out there. And so guess where we're going to look? We're going to look to see who else is opening, and we're going to see who else is going to offer a more fit to my life and what I can do mission and purpose wise that's conducive to that. And I'll make the switch if I need to.
That makes sense. Jen, anything to add?
Yeah, a lot. Adam is completely right. And what he's talking about is analyzing performance, figuring out the outcome that you want and how to get there. That's what is your best day. That's what that means. As far as job postings, imagine people read them, but they also read Glassdoor. So if your job posting doesn't describe the actual culture that people live, they will know it immediately, long before they apply. So, describe your culture, the experience in terms people care about. People want purpose, they want quality, they want equity, they want advancement, engagement, all of those things, include that. But also remember that turnover is very, very rapid and getting more rapid, and that this is a buyer's market. So if you aren't developing a culture that people want to live in, you're going to exclude an enormous amount of talent. The people that you do hire aren't going to stay long, and that goes up to the executive level. Executive tenure is like 4.9 years now. So by misstating your purpose or misdescribing your culture in a job posting, you are ratcheting up your HR expenses considerably and permanently. It's a whole lot cheaper to be accurate, honest, and give people what they want to do a good job.
Yeah, I think answering those basic questions: who, what, when, where, and why, right? In a job posting, who's the company? What am I going to do there? What's the pay going to be? Why should I work there? And make it short, simple, and sweet, because as we know, I can't even finish a Netflix series without starting the next one. And Jen, that stat that you just shared, that it's 4.9 years for executives, if we don't fix this sooner rather than later, people are going to be hopping from company to company, similar to the way NBA players hop from team to team in order to win a championship or find that next payday.
That is, they are no different. Workers are no different from basketball players. They want to go someplace that they can win. And if they can't win here, and this is more especially true for the highly talented, if they can't win here, they'll win somewhere else, and they are always looking. Yeah. So, and the why thing that you mentioned, where, when, and why, if you need people to come into the office, tell them why. You know, we really do need to see your faces. We really do need you to collaborate together on a whiteboard. It makes us feel good, whatever. But if you do need people in, tell them exactly why, so that they understand what they are supposed to contribute and what they should expect from them.
That makes sense. Some people do love whiteboards. There are digital versions of whiteboards now that people can leverage if they want to. A fun fact there. But Adam, one thing that you mentioned is when you need to communicate with Jen, you just pick up the phone and call. You don't email her, Slack her, Teams her, whatever it may be, and say, "Are you free?" Is that something that at Gallup has been instituted company-wide, or is it something that has been learned over time? And the reason why I asked this is recently, one of the situations that you described where a couple people were in the office, they said, let's hop in a meeting room and just, get this done, get it out the door. And a couple people felt excluded in that, where they could have just picked up the phone and called them. So is that something that you have to consciously make an effort to, or is it just something that is really learned over time and becomes second nature to you?
Yeah. There's two stats I want to lead with here that are Gallup-esque. The first one is in 2017, our latest State of the American Workplace report came out. We brought forth a stat that's pretty scary, which is 6 out of 10 U.S. employees know what's expected of them at work. So imagine what are the other 4 out of 10 doing every day? Even worse, what if they work for you? Even worse, what if they're on your team? So knowing what's expected of you has to be a part of this answer. But then also in our research around It's the Managers, we say up to 70% is the responsibility of the manager's team engagement. So put those two together. You've got a role that's the most influential role, I would argue, in a company, that's involved with engagement, that's got 40% of their people potentially walking around going, what do I do today? Now, is that a problem? Of course it is, because when they're at home, that's where the creativity comes into play, and that's not what we want. So some of the things that start with, how do I just ingrain these cultures, these roles, these things of that sort? And the way we define culture at Gallup is, how does work get done around here? Well, we're a very relationship-driven organization. Right? The most successful people make the best relationships up front, right from the go, right? And then we get work done through people, and people done through the work. So in our within our team, within our our local culture, sometimes we say, we've got some things that just happen because we count on people's talent. Meaning, in our Clifton Strengths domains, which is our development tool, I am not your relationship guy. Don't count on me for it. It's not going to happen. And my closest partners know that. Jennifer, I know, has higher themes in relationship than me. So how does that joint partnership work? I count on Jennifer for things that it's blind to me. And that's not me ignoring a weaker area of my talent profile. It's me leveraging a talent profile of another peer of mine. So when you kind of pull back the curtain on how that works, those that are high communicators, those that are highly relationship driven, those that are high, we have an execution domain on getting work done. You ask those individuals, what are we missing? So we've come up with tactics like at the end of a meeting, one of us will say, who else needs to know what we talked about today? Easy sentence, goes a long way, because then it starts a train of not emails and team messages and everything else. When you started saying Slack, everything, I'm like, how many verbs are there these days on how we're going to communicate with someone? We've got a role and assigned includer. Now, includer is a certain talent profile that we know that they seek to include people, things, processes along the way. Well, a person with high includer, we just want you to be you. So can you make sure everyone's included on this call, right? Make sure we didn't ask, or we didn't, forget somebody or anything of that sort. Other managers that are with me on the strong strategic thinking and less on relationship, we'll just make an agreement. Let's start remote. So if we pose a question in the room, you kind of see everyone do this, look up at the TV and say, what do you guys want to start with first? There's no prescriptive one size fits all for this. It starts with the manager. It starts how you get work done. And then you just leverage your people, right? Because you start to engage them for who they are, not, for other reasons. You just listen to talent falls out of people's mouth every single day. It's your job to know what to do with it when they say it.
And you don't know unless you ask. I'm not an enormous fan of pulse surveys. I think they're used for too much, but you can put some edges on your culture with simple questions. Like, do you mind if people call you? Also, do you have a phone? Things like that. And what you'll hear, especially from your lower level managers, will probably surprise you.
That's awesome. I love that sentiment of starting the call with remote, because it's happened to, I think, everyone at one point in time where they were out of the office and they were permanently, typically an in-office employee, and they can't get their 2 cents in. They don't know when to hop into the call. And that's a challenge, right? Because people do have other things going outside of work. I will say this. I can't believe that I asked that question, because literally I got a Slack in my right-hand corner that said, hey, are you free to work? And that employee needs to be reprimanded for not watching this episode of Talent Experience.
Jennifer said it.
But I do appreciate that my phone didn't ring. The last question that I have for both of you, and first of all, thank you both for joining. This has been awesome. I want to call out a comment. Tia says, love the highly talented people are like NBA players looking for a win. I think that is awesome. There's a ton of analogies there. You need your superstar. You need your role player. You need your inclusive individual, right? That your assist maker. Maybe it's Ben Simmons, can't shoot a 3, but it is what it is. They get the ball moving, and hopefully you can score some points. My last question is around stay interviews. We focused a lot on external talent coming in and how to make hybrid work in that sense. But when it comes to stay interviews, we talked about the base pay conversation and how not to put that in an email. But what else should be covered? Because I know that culture, I'm sure, needs to come up. That was something that we talked about a bunch, as well as what you're doing, what X is that you need to provide. What are you doing those other 4 days, or four employees that aren't getting work done, wandering around, what to find? What kind of questions should be had in stay interviews when it comes with employees? We'll start with you, Jen. Are you okay with that?
Sure. Adam's an expert on it, but before he starts, let me just say this. There is a financial benefit to doing good stay interviews, and it can be, just depending on the size of the company, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Engaged employees won't leave a company for less than 20%-ish. Our analysis has found disengaged people will leave for like a popsicle. It doesn't matter. So when you do a stay interview, find out the factors that matter to that person, because it is worth a huge amount of money. If an employee is making $100,000, they're forfeiting 20 grand to stay with you. Find out what that 20 grand is worth, what it's paying for.
Okay. Adam, you're the expert, I've been told.
Here we go. We're gonna have some fun with this one. Let's first start with Warren Berger has a book called The Book of Beautiful Questions. If you're going to enter into the space of writing some questions, just give it a read. And what I mean by that is your millennial read, where you buy it and you read the back of it and skim through it. I'm asking you to do that. At least start there. And if you can find time, work it in. Okay, so stay interviews, what are we aiming at here? We're aiming at your employee living their best possible life. So that's not just going to be questions aimed at their career, aimed at their job. You got to encompass more than that and uncover more than what that is. And if that's your aim, if that's the frame that we're asking in our questions, well, then we've got to have some sort of a framework to set that up. What I would encourage everybody to do, and even ask yourself this question, if you, unless you're driving, then just think about it. If you're wherever you're at, write down what's the biggest issue you have today. And this could cover anything. This could be your career, it could be relationship, could be financially, could be something at home, right? All of this, because you're going to see how this stay conversation kind of spills over all of this. Okay, so if you've got that problem, if not, hit pause, do it real quick. I'll give you a second. Okay, if you've got now that problem, or if you've thought about it, you're driving. Right now, think of now you're in your workplace and your manager comes to you and says, you know, I want to have my subject of my email said stay conversation. I can't wait for this. But if you're a good manager and you have ongoing conversations, you can unpack this one at a time. Think about your career. What do you like? What do you like every day about what you do here? Right, and maybe your biggest issue was, I don't really like this job. I don't like the people. I don't like the product. I worked for a public utility company. I love the people. I didn't understand the product because my lights are on or they're off. The gas is turned on or it's off. It didn't excite me. People were great. The product I didn't really get excited about. So did I like what I did every day? Maybe a little bit every now and then. So, okay, maybe that's it. Socially, here's a way to unpack this. Do you have meaningful friendships in your life? Now, those of us that work a ton of hours, sometimes it's hard to admit we spend more time at the work with our work friends than we do at home with our families. Maybe that's not your gig right now, or you've experienced that, but you could see how the social side of things, of meaningful friendships, gets you towards that best possible life. Maybe that was the biggest problem. So, managers got to work their way into that. Financially, we would say, and I'll uncover what I'm telling you here in a second, is how do you manage your money well? We have the fortune at Gallup where our managers, we have a credit union that's tied to us, ongoing conversations about how do you manage your money. I know it's a sticky conversation for some managers to have. Don't tell them how to do it. Tell them how they get involved with things, how to do so. Right? That's how you support that. How do you have energy to get things done? It's the physical side of things. Right? Maybe your problem was that you wanted to work on your COVID pounds you picked up along the way. Well, again, manager has up that 70% of engagement. Maybe they're not going to write your meal plan for you, but are there things within your company that can be supportive of a physical aspect of things? And then lastly, you like where you live. Maybe that's a hard part of what not keeping you in the best possible life. What I was working through here is those stay conversations, when they focus on the employee's well-being, those 5 things we just talked about: career, social, financial, physical, community. Those conversations and questions, there's not one great question you can ask. Get creative based on the person, right? I don't need so many questions that are relationships. Just what do you want to know? Just ask me. But if you unpack it in that way, you're going to hear your best all-star talk about each one of those 5 elements of well-being, to where you can in turn put that in your job postings to say, we care about you as a person first and then an employee. And if you have somebody like me, I would say prove it. Then you could prove it through, we're worried about your financial state. We keep track to make sure you're community. You can just rifle through all of those, because we know in our studies that when you're firing on all cylinders of those, we say it's a net thriving score, which is that you're living your best possible life. And I don't think anybody that's on this earth that doesn't want to be living in that spot. And we know a lot of it has to do with, starts with your career, right? Did you get told you're going to be a carpenter, or do you want to be one? Did you get told that you're going to be an accountant, or do you want to be one? Right? All of those factor into that.
That makes a lot of sense. And I love the sentiment of what do you enjoy about work today, right? Because oftentimes I think those conversations from managers to employees are, where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years, right? Who knows at this point?
If you would have long hair. Right?
Exactly.
Not going to happen.
But it really making it as digestible as possible and finding out those key aspects can go a long way. And then turning that around and not only using it to keep your top talent, but also attracting new talent because of what's important to them sounds spectacular. So thank you for this. Before we go, Adam, I saw you dropped in the private chat an article that you wrote about one of the topics that we covered today. I'll be sure to post that on LinkedIn as well as the YouTube, and we'll include it in the blog. Before we go, any final words from either of you? Anything you'd love to promote? Movies that you're starring in coming up that you want people to go see? We'll start with you, Jen.
I would recommend checking out Gallup's new book, Wellbeing at Work. It talks about a lot about what we've discussed here, but in more detail. And yeah, that's the one. You've got it, Adam. Good work. But it explains why these things are important and how they affect companies and individuals.
Awesome. And Adam?
I'm going to try. I keep it short, promise. Here we go. Remote working and hybrid work is not new. So let's stop treating it like it is and get to the past principles that have worked for years before. 1976 is the first academic paper in writing on remote work. So it's not new. Let's just figure out what really worked then and to figure out what really works now, because you've got a big workforce being millennials looking and seeking for it. And to keep people thriving in their career, start the conversations if you're not already having them.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. Definitely check out the book. We'll drop that in the show notes as well as in the blog. And I wish you two nothing but the best in your remote work environments. Hopefully we'll have you on soon, not in studio, because I don't want to take away your favorite part of your job, which is working from home. But I wish you nothing but the best. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks, Devin.
Thanks. There you have it. That was Adam and Jen from Gallup. Fantastic episode, if I do say so myself. Ton of insight there. Thank you so much, everyone in the comment section. Before we go, I do want to call attention to not last week's episode, but the week before, because last week we celebrated our year anniversary of the Talent Experience live show. So if you want to catch some of our top clips, definitely check out that episode and the blog. The episode that I'm going to highlight today is It's All About the Bot, how Stanford Health Care connects with candidates. And in this episode, we chatted specifically around bot and bot analytics on how it is impacting Stanford Health's career site. And with that being said, let's air the clip.
I look at our analytics every morning. Every morning I look at it. And part of the reason why I do that is because our chat bot, along with our net promoter score and how is our website, those two pieces provide me insight into how the website is doing and any challenges that somebody may be having with our site. So when something might get disconnected, people will let me know. That is like their way to communicate with us. Like, hey, I tried to upload this and it wasn't working. Or, hey, I clicked on this link and it's broken. It won't take me where I thought it was going to take me to. And so I go on there every morning and instead of looking at the 5 scores, I look at the 1 score. What is the challenge? And if I begin to see a pattern, and I begin to see a pattern then in our FAQs on the chatbot side, I look at those and we begin to implement what needs to change. And so I appreciate people's responses into and answers that they're giving us through both of those channels, because it does help us create a better, more useful site for the candidates. I know for our new grad nurses, we were getting a lot of questions in our chatbot about how to apply and when will I find out, if I got accepted, just a ton of questions around new grad nursing. And we thought we had answered quite a few of them through different channels that we were doing, but we realized there was such a need that we're actually creating a more robust landing page on our career site with videos and links and more details just for our new grad nursing. And that came from our chatbot, letting us know that these were the questions that were being asked. And so we realized there needs to be an extra layer in there.
Michelle was a wealth of knowledge all around chatbot and how Stanford Health is using it. If you don't think bot's important, I want you to do yourself a favor. Think back to Prime Day. And if there was a question on a product that you were thinking about engaging with or buying, when you went to ask that question, was it by bot? This is how we communicate as fast in real time as we possibly can. Career sites with chatbots are far more effective. We're coming out with the 2021 benchmarks report on chatbots next month, so definitely look out for that. But with that being said, thank you everyone for a spectacular episode. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Tia, and everyone else who chimed into the comment section. Today was an awesome episode. Can't wait to tune in with everyone next week. We're chatting with Will Stanny of Proactive Talent. So you don't want to miss that episode. But in the meantime, I hope everyone enjoys their weekend, and we'll see you then. Thanks.